Today, we're taking a look at a plane whose story would better suit a satirical comedy rather than an actual page of history. But fate is a cruel and often sarcastic mistress, and what follows is indeed a true story. A story of lies, money, more lies, and badly built planes with wings that fall off at random. I am, of course, talking about the infamous Christmas bullet. It got its name from the interesting man who designed it, Dr. William Whitney Christmas. Born in 1865 in North Carolina, he was either one of the greatest con men of his generation, or he was one thoroughly misplaced daydreamer. Despite having no background in aeronautical engineering, or engineering in general for that matter, he arrived on the scene in the late 1900s, claiming to have designed, built, and flown his own aircraft in 1908, which would have made him one of America's pioneering aviators. There was just one problem: this supposed plane didn't apparently exist. Some sources seem to conflict on the reason for said plane's absence. One story goes that Christmas claimed he burned the aircraft and its design drawings to prevent his ideas from being stolen. Another source claims that the aircraft was destroyed in a flying accident. Either way, it no longer existed, which meant people could only take Christmas at his word that he was indeed a qualified aviator. Apparently, the good doctor was rather convincing with his tales, as he was able to found the Christmas Airplane Company in 1909 with the help of some investors. Supposedly, that same year, he designed and built a biplane that he nicknamed the Red Bird. This was apparently flown in 1909, but there seems to be questionable, if any, actual evidence to support this. According to him, though, it was a success, and he was able to give up his career in medicine to pursue aviation full-time. Over the next few years, the company changed hands and investors multiple times, and along the way it dodged the occasional lawsuit for deception or even patent infringement. Things could have gotten quite messy, but the outbreak of the First World War provided Christmas with new opportunities to develop and sell his supposedly revolutionary designs. In 1915, he wrote an article for the New York Times where he claimed to have developed a new bomber which he dubbed the Battle Cruiser. The European allies were apparently so impressed that they had already ordered 11 examples of the Battle Cruiser by the time of his article's printing. There was just one small, inescapable error in this article. The plane didn't actually exist, and I imagine there would have been some incredulous remarks in British and French aviation circles when a copy of this article finally reached their offices. Realizing that backing up his claims, and actually developing a feasible heavy bomber, was probably beyond him, Christmas set his sights on a more modest goal, and that was to build a fast, single-seat biplane, which sounded normal enough, until he began trying to convince his management and the army that his plane was the perfect tool for a daring mission to kidnap Kaiser Wilhelm II. I wish I was making this up. Incredibly, despite having no physical evidence of previous aircraft designs, or any formal qualifications outside of medicine, and even here something that might be somewhat inflated, Christmas managed to enlist the required help to build his Kaiser kidnapping contraption. Firstly, he managed to find a brokerage to invest in his project. Secondly, he convinced the near-bankrupt Continental Aircraft Company to build the plane. And thirdly, he managed to convince a senator to approach the army about securing a powerful engine, which was a difficult thing to come by during wartime. For the project to have even made it this far, all parties concerned must have been colorblind, otherwise they could not have missed the sheer quantity of red flags that were presented with such an endeavour. Christmas never put his full aircraft specification to paper, but it was so bizarre that it almost made the workers at Continental Aircraft pull out from the deal, had they not been so desperate for money. It was to be built as an unequal span biplane. However, its wings had no struts, nor any wire bracing to hold them together. With his superior knowledge on aircraft design, Christmas believed that the wings should be flexible, and that they should flap like a bird's. The main method of control would be wing warping, something designed and patented by the Wright brothers, and indeed a somewhat common sight amongst early aircraft designs. But how this was expected to work on such unconventional wings was anybody's guess. The materials used to construct the plane were not always the types found on aircraft at the time, and Vincent Bernelli, the chief engineer at Continental Aircraft, made multiple public statements to the fact that he was only involved with the design of the fuselage. Privately, he had grave concerns about the design. The tail surfaces were too small, the materials used were subpar, and the wings were so heavy that they had to be winched in place during construction. But Christmas ignored his pleas, and Bernelli eventually resigned from Continental over his concerns about the safety of the design in general. By the time everything was finished, the war was over, and as such, the Kaiser was no longer the most ideal target for a political kidnapping, but that did not deter Dr. Christmas. During the later stages of construction, the aircraft had been given the nickname of Bullet, for whatever reason, and it was given an engine in the form of a US Army Liberty 6. The Army had agreed to fitting the engine to Christmas's design, but only on the provision that it be used for ground testing, and that Army officials had to be present for the first flight. Of course, these words fell on totally deaf ears, and Christmas immediately began searching for a test pilot. Strangely enough, many were reluctant to get into a plane that had a fuselage built from hardwood and steel, but had wings that looked about as strong as a piece of damp cardboard. And it was not until the end of the year that Christmas finally found a gullible enough pilot to shoehorn into his plane. Cuthbert Mills, a pilot with the Air Mail Service, took the Christmas Bullet up for its first, and only, flight. After climbing for some time, the wings, which were designed to flap like those of a bird, decided instead to simply break off from the Bullet, and the plane plummeted to the ground, taking Cuthbert Mills to his death. The accident did not deter Christmas in the slightest. In fact, he covered up the whole thing, and claimed that Mills had successfully completed the test flight. He immediately began work on a second Christmas Bullet. However, he had to source a different engine, as he had not even bothered to tell the Army that A, the plane had failed, or B, their engine had been destroyed during said failure. In March 1919, Christmas put the second Bullet on display at the New York Air Show, where he had the audacity to advertise it as the safest, easiest to control plane in the world. It was this safe, easy-to-control plane that flew later on in that year, and much like the first, its wings promptly snapped off from the fuselage, and the resulting crash once again killed another pilot. After this, there was no more interest from the US Army in Christmas's design, surprisingly, but he also faced no consequences for his duplicitous actions. Not only that, but he continued to push for the development of his revolutionary designs, even attempting to go before Congress and claiming that he was swamped by orders from Europe for the Bullet, and that his plane was capable of 200 miles an hour and more. Perhaps the most ridiculous part of this story was that he actually got paid by the Army, who had previously agreed to buy his so-called flexible wing design. In 1923, Christmas finally sent the Army a bill for $100,000, and the Army paid it. He passed away in 1960, a relatively wealthy man, and the Christmas Bullet would go down as one of the most ludicrous aircraft in history. As always, thank you all very much for watching, and a big thank you, of course, goes out to the patrons. I will get this list updated and the shoutouts for the Wing Commander tier patrons sorted as soon as I get back from my holiday, but thank you all so much, and I'll catch you all next time. Goodbye.